High Commander Vextal stood at the observation deck of the diplomatic vessel Eternal Dawn, his four eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the human fleet's approach. After 2 centuries of diplomatic service to the Galactic Concordat, he had thought nothing could surprise him anymore. He was wrong. The humans were coming. Not in the organized battle formations his species had perfected over millennia of space warfare, but in waves of seemingly chaotic patterns that defied conventional military doctrine. Their ships, a hodgepodge of designs ranging from sleek warships to converted mining vessels, moved with a singular purpose that sent chills down his spine. High Commander, his senior tactical officer, Zinra, called out, "The humans are broadcasting on all frequencies. Should I?" "Let me hear it," Vextal interrupted, his secondary hearts beating faster with anticipation. The message that filled the bridge wasn't the expected diplomatic exchange. Instead, it was a simple statement, repeated in every major galactic language. "Remember New Sydney. 3 days ago, the Krixar Dominion had attacked the human colony of New Sydney, believing it to be a soft target. They had expected the humans to sue for peace, perhaps offer concessions. Instead, humanity had mobilized its entire fleet, not just military vessels, but civilian ships as well. Every human capable of fighting had volunteered. Their tactics make no sense," Zinra muttered, her sensor stalks twitching in confusion. "They're sacrificing their smaller ships to open gaps in the Dominion's defense grid. The cost in lives." "They don't care about the cost." Ambassador Trellick spoke up from his position near the rear of the bridge. The elderly diplomat had spent more time among humans than any other member of the Concordat. "That's what makes them different from us. What makes them dangerous." Vextal watched as a human mining ship, its hull reinforced with hastily welded armor plates, rammed through a Dominion cruiser's shields at full speed. Both vessels erupted in a spectacular explosion, but the gap they left allowed 3 human warships to slip through. "Explain," Vextal commanded, unable to take his eyes off the unfolding battle. "Most species fight wars with victory as their goal," Trellick said softly. "Humans fight wars with vengeance in their hearts. The Dominion killed 3,000 colonists on New Sydney. Now the humans won't stop until they've extracted a price for every single life lost." The battle continued to unfold before them. The Dominion fleet, despite its superior technology and training, began to falter under the relentless human assault. Where other species would have retreated to preserve their forces, the humans pressed forward, accepting casualties that would have broken the morale of any other race. "They're not even using their most advanced ships," Zinra observed, her voice tinged with horror. "Those are in defensive positions around their core worlds. These are their expendable forces." "Expendable." Trellix laughed, but there was no humor in it. "No, every ship out there is crewed by volunteers. Parents, siblings, and children of those who died on New Sydney. They're not expendable forces. They're angry ones." The Dominion's formation finally broke. Their remaining ships began emergency jumps to faster-than-light travel, but the humans weren't finished. Their faster ships were already moving to pursue, while the slower vessels began rescue operations for their own survivors. "Send a priority message to the Concordat Council," Vextal ordered, his voice grave. The reports about human warfare weren't exaggerated. They were understated. As the message was being prepared, they received a transmission from the human flagship. A tired-looking human admiral appeared on screen, her uniform bearing the marks of recent damage control efforts. "Diplomatic vessel Eternal Dawn, this is Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Force. We appreciate your neutrality in this conflict, but I suggest you withdraw to a safe distance. What you're about to witness, well, let's just say it would be better if there were fewer diplomatic observers." Before Vextal could respond, the Admiral continued. "The Dominion thought they could break human resolve by attacking civilians. Instead, they're about to learn why every spacefaring species that survived contact with Earth has one rule in common: never give humans a reason to wage war." The transmission cut off, and Vextal ordered an immediate withdrawal. As the Eternal Dawn pulled away from the battle zone, he found himself wondering if the Concordat's diplomatic archives needed updating. Perhaps under human military doctrine, they should add a warning. They don't fight for victory. They fight for retribution. High Commander, Trellick said quietly as they prepared for FTL jump. There's an old human saying that I think you should include in your report. The most dangerous creature is not the one that fights for survival, but the one that fights for family. Vextal nodded slowly, watching the last images of the battle fade from their screens. The Dominion was about to learn that lesson the hard way, and the galaxy would never forget it. Fleet Captain Marvan of the Dominion's 3rd Expeditionary Force had seen many battles, but nothing like this. His command center's displays showed the impossible. Human forces that should have been annihilated were not only still fighting but advancing. Status report, he barked, his mandibles clicking with agitation. Sir, the human forces from Sector 7 they're still operational, his tactical officer reported, uncertainty wavering in all 3 of her voice chambers. Their ships are heavily damaged, running on minimal power, but they continue to press forward. The tactical display told a story that defied military logic. The human fleet had been caught in a perfect ambush. Their supply lines were cut, their communications jammed, and their forces divided. By all conventional warfare metrics, they should have surrendered hours ago. Instead, they had cannibalized their dead ships, jury-rigged repairs that should have been impossible, and kept fighting. Not just fighting, advancing. Play the last transmission from their commander, Marvan ordered, hoping to understand their strategy. The human captain's face appeared on screen, her environment suit cracked and sealed with emergency patches. Behind her, fires raged, suppressed by failing containment fields. To all survivors of Battle Group Thermopylae, the Dominion thinks they've trapped us. They think we're finished, but they've made one critical mistake. They've left us nothing to lose. Execute Operation Phoenix. Show them why humanity named our ships after ancient warriors and lost battles. Marvan watched as the human vessels, many of them operating on barely functional engines, began a complex series of maneuvers. They were using their own destroyed ships as cover, turning debris fields into makeshift fortress positions. Sir, his engineering chief called out, we're detecting unusual power signatures from the human wrecks. They're converting their damaged reactors into makeshift weapons. Before Marvan could respond, the first wave hit. Human ships, too damaged to fight conventionally, deliberately overloaded their power cores in sequence. The carefully orchestrated chain of explosions were tolls in the Dominion's formation. Impossible, Marvan whispered. They're sacrificing their own escape vessels. Through these gaps charged the remaining human warships, their weapons blazing despite critical damage. They weren't fighting to break free or escape. They were fighting to reach the Dominion's primary supply base. Sir, we're receiving reports from Base Station Omega, his communications officer announced, horror evident in her tone. The humans, they're broadcasting a message to their forces. Remember New Sydney. Remember why we fight. Marvan watched as his carefully planned ambush transformed into chaos. The humans had turned their own desperation into a weapon. Their damaged ships became improvised missiles. Their trapped position became a staging ground for an unexpected offensive. They're not retreating, his tactical officer observed, her professional demeanor cracking. Every military doctrine says they should retreat, try to preserve their forces. But they're not. They're making us pay, Marvan finished. Not just for today, but for New Sydney. A new transmission cut through their command channel. The same human captain, now standing on a bridge that was open to space, protected only by emergency force fields. Dominion Command, you thought you could break us. Instead, you've freed us from the burden of caution. Here's a lesson in human history. Some of our greatest victories came after you backed us into a corner. The tactical display updated, showing the human fleet's true target. They weren't trying to escape or even survive. They were positioning themselves for a direct assault on the Dominion's main supply lines. All forces, fall back to defensive positions, Marvan ordered, finally understanding. We didn't trap them. We freed them from the need to be careful. Signal High Command. The humans don't follow conventional military logic. When defeated, they don't retreat. They become more dangerous. As his forces executed their withdrawal, Marvan made a personal note in his combat log. Human military doctrine defies conventional analysis. Their most dangerous weapons aren't their ships or their technology. It's their ability to turn defeat into desperate innovation. They don't know how to accept defeat, so they transform it into something else entirely. The last transmission from the human fleet commander would haunt him for years. You should have finished us when you had the chance. Now we're going to show you why humanity's greatest heroes are the ones who kept fighting when victory seemed impossible. The Battle of Sector 7 would later be studied in military academies across the galaxy, not for its scale or strategic importance, but for one crucial lesson. Never assume a defeated human force is no longer a threat. Sometimes, that's when they're most dangerous. Supreme Commander Caxteel of the Dominion forces sat in the austere human interrogation chamber. His pride hurt more than his body. The humans hadn't tortured him, hadn't even raised their voices. Instead, they'd done something far worse. They'd shown him videos of Earth. I don't understand the purpose of this, he said to the human interrogator, a deceptively gentle-looking female named Colonel Sarah Chen. If you seek military intelligence, I am prepared for conventional questioning. The colonel smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. We're not interested in your tactical data, Commander. We want you to understand what you're fighting against. Another video played on the wall. Children playing in a park, elderly humans feeding birds, a couple getting married. Mundane scenes from 1,000 worlds, yet somehow different. Your species isn't unique in having families, Caxteel observed. All sentient races have something to protect. True, Chen agreed, but there's something you haven't grasped about humans yet. We don't just fight for what we have, we fight for what we remember. The images changed to show ruins of Earth cities from their early nuclear age, followed by their resurrection into gleaming metropolises. Every human colony, every settlement, carries a piece of Earth with them. When you attacked New Sydney, you didn't just kill colonists. You attacked Earth itself. Caxteel's secondary breathing sacs constricted. That's irrational. New Sydney was light years from Earth. Exactly, Chen said, leaning forward. That's what makes us dangerous. Distance doesn't diminish our connection to home. Every human settlement, no matter how far from Earth, carries our entire history with them. The screens now showed historical footage. Humans fighting against overwhelming odds throughout their history, surviving disasters, rebuilding from ruins. Your military analysts noted our tendency to name ships and colonies after ancient battles and fallen heroes. Did they ever ask why? Before Caxteel could respond, the images shifted to New Sydney. Not the burning ruins after the Dominion attack, but before. A thriving colony with architecture reminiscent of old Earth cities, children playing in artificial parks designed to look like Earth's landscapes. Every colony is Earth reborn, Chen continued. When you attack one, you're not just fighting those colonists. You're fighting every human who ever lived, every battle we've ever fought, every loss we've ever endured. We carry our entire history with us, Commander. Caxteel felt an unfamiliar sensation, something close to fear. Your species' attachment to its homeworld borders on psychological dysfunction. Perhaps, Chen acknowledged. But it's a dysfunction that makes us uniquely dangerous. We don't just fight for survival or resources. We fight for memory. New footage appeared, the aftermath of the New Sydney attack, but not the destruction. Instead, it showed humans from other colonies volunteering for military service, civilian ships being converted to warships, entire populations mobilizing for war. Your analysts predicted we would sue for peace after New Sydney, Chen said. They thought distance would dilute our response. They didn't understand that to humans, There is no such thing as a distant colony. Every human settlement is Earth. Every attack on our people is an attack on our history. Caxteel watched as more images played. Humans converting mining equipment into weapons, commercial ships into troop carriers, civilian stations into military bases. Your response seems disproportionate. Disproportionate. Chen laughed softly. Commander, your forces attacked Earth. Not the planet itself, but what it represents, our right to spread among the stars, to carry our history with us. The proportional response to that hasn't even begun. The final image was simple. Earth, seen from space, beautiful and blue. You know what makes humans different from every other spacefaring race, Commander. We never truly leave home. We carry it with us, in our traditions, in our architecture, in our dreams. When you attack any part of humanity, you attack Earth itself. And we have 12,000 years of recorded history, showing what happens to those who threaten our home. As Chen stood to leave, she placed a small holographic projector on the table. It showed New Sydney being rebuilt, but not as a frontier colony, as a mirror of Earth's cities. Your strategists thought distance would be our weakness. Instead, it's our strength. We don't need supply lines to Earth to remember who we are. Every human carries Earth with them, and that memory makes us fight harder the further from home we are. Caxteel watched her leave, then looked back at the endless loop of Earth images playing on the walls. For the first time in his military career, he began composing a surrender recommendation in his mind. How do you defeat an enemy that carries their homeworld in their hearts, who turns distance into determination, who fights harder the further they are from home? The answer, he realized, watching humans rebuild yet another piece of Earth among the stars, was simple. You don't. General Yixera of the Dominion siege forces stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The temperature on the frozen planet of Nova 6 had dropped to -150 degrees Celsius, enough to disable even their most advanced equipment. Yet somehow, the trapped human garrison wasn't just surviving. They were thriving. Another probe gone dark, her sensor chief reported. That's the 7th one this rotation. The humans are adapting to our surveillance patterns. Yixera clicked her mandibles in frustration. The siege had been perfect. They had trapped 3,000 human soldiers inside their base when the planet entered its extreme winter cycle. With temperatures far below survival levels and no hope of reinforcement for 6 months, victory should have been assured. Show me their power signatures again, she commanded. The display shifted, revealing something that defied conventional military logic. The humans had deliberately shut down their base's main reactor 3 weeks ago. Instead of dying in the cold, they had somehow turned the extreme environment to their advantage. Ma'am, her chief engineer interrupted. We've decoded their internal communications from yesterday. You need to hear this. The recording played, filled with the sound of human laughter. Actual laughter during a siege. Hey, Captain, guess what we're calling ourselves now? The Ice Bears. Get it? Because of how we're using the thermal sinks. Another voice, more authoritative but equally amused. Just make sure those heat exchangers keep working. Who knew all those survival training sessions about ancient Arctic warfare would come in handy? Yixera's tactical officer, Ventil, brought up a new analysis. General, they're using the extreme cold to their advantage. They've modified their environmental suits to work like something called thermal regulators. They're not fighting the cold, they're working with it. The display showed human soldiers moving through the frozen landscape, their modified suits collecting and storing the extreme cold itself. They were using the deadly environment as a power source, turning the killing cold into an ally. Impossible, Yixera muttered. Our intelligence said humans were a warm-weather species. They should be crippled by these temperatures. A new transmission intercepted from the human base played across the command center. Command, Ice Bear Team 3 reporting. We've successfully converted the 19th thermal sink. Estimated power generation is now at 200% of base requirements. Permission to begin offensive operations. The response came quickly. Granted, Ice Bear 3. Show them why humans named so many warships after Arctic animals. Yixera watched in growing horror as human signatures began moving through their perimeter. Their modified suits weren't just protecting them. They were using stored thermal energy as a weapon, flash-freezing Dominion equipment with concentrated cold. They turned the entire planet into a weapon. Ventul observed, something like awe in his voice. Every step they take collects more thermal energy. The colder it gets, the stronger they become. A memory surfaced in Yixera's mind, a warning from High Command about human adaptability. They had dismissed it as exaggeration. Now, watching human soldiers turn the very forces that should have killed them into a source of power, she understood. New transmission from their commander, her communications officer announced. The voice that filled the command center was calm, almost cheerful. To the Dominion forces, we appreciate the chance to field test our new thermal adaptation systems. Your siege has helped us perfect technology we never would have developed otherwise. As a gesture of gratitude, we'd like to demonstrate what else we've learned about fighting in the cold. The tactical display exploded with activity. Human forces were emerging from hidden ice tunnels they had carved throughout the battlefield. Their suits, powered by the very cold that should have killed them, made them nearly invisible to thermal sensors. General, her second-in-command said quietly, they're not just surviving. They turned this entire planet into a fortress. Every attempt we made to kill them has made them stronger. Yixera watched as her carefully planned siege crumbled. The humans had done more than survive. They had turned an impossible situation into an advantage. Each failure of their technology had been answered with innovation. Each hardship met with adaptation. Send to High Command, she ordered, watching another section of their perimeter fall to the ice-wielding humans. The siege of Nova 6 has failed. Human capacity for adaptation exceeds all previous estimates. They don't just endure hardship, they weaponize it. As her forces began their retreat, they received one final transmission from the human commander. Next time you try to freeze us out, remember this. Humanity's greatest achievements often come from our worst situations. Thanks for helping us prove that again. The siege of Nova 6 would enter military history not as a failed human garrison, but as the birthplace of human thermal warfare technology. In the end, the Dominion's perfect trap had given humanity exactly what it needed. Another impossible situation to overcome. In the gleaming command center of the Dominion's Supreme War Council, First Strategist Nixarn faced the assembled war leaders with news none of them wanted to hear. The holographic displays showed what many had already suspected but feared to admit. They were losing the war they had started. The human response to New Sydney has escalated beyond all predictive models. He began, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. What we intended as a show of force has instead revealed something our analysts failed to consider. Humans don't think of defeat the way we do. The tactical display shifted, showing battles across dozens of systems. In each engagement, human forces demonstrated strategies that defied conventional military doctrine. Mining ships turned into warships, civilian vessels becoming troop carriers, and trading stations transformed into fortresses. We thought we understood their weaknesses, Nixarn continued. Their short lifespans, their biological fragility, their emotional attachments. Instead, we've discovered these are their strengths. Supreme Commander Valthex, his carapace bearing the scars of recent battles, stepped forward. Explain. Their short lives make them fearless, Nixarn said, bringing up footage from recent engagements. Their fragility breeds innovation. Their emotions. He paused, mandibles clicking in what might have been fear. Their emotions make them terrifying. The display showed human ships engaging in maneuvers that sacrificed everything for victory. Civilian vessels running blockades to supply besieged colonies. Damaged warships continuing to fight long after their systems should have failed. We've lost 63% of our forward bases, Nixarn reported, not to their military might, but to their adaptability. Every defeat teaches them. Every loss makes them more determined. They're not fighting this war to win anymore. They're fighting to ensure we lose. The chamber erupted in angry chittering, but Valthex raised a claw for silence. Your recommendation? Nixarn activated his final display, a simulation showing the projected course of the war. We must sue for peace while we still can. The humans aren't just defeating us. They're learning from us. Every technology we use against them, they adapt and improve upon. Every strategy we employ, they counter and evolve beyond. New footage played. Human ships using modified versions of Dominion weapons, their engineers having somehow reversed engineered technology that should have been beyond their understanding. Their stolen knowledge combined with their relentless determination had created something unprecedented in galactic warfare. Most concerning, Nixarn continued, is their response to New Sydney. We thought destroying one colony would demoralize them. Instead, it has united them in ways our psychologists didn't think possible. Every human, from their core worlds to their furthest colonies, now fights as one. The chamber's displays showed the current front lines, or rather, the lack of them. Human forces didn't hold territory in traditional ways. They flowed like water, struck like lightning, and adapted like viruses. They're not just fighting for revenge, Valthex observed quietly. They're fighting to ensure this never happens again. Exactly, Nixarn agreed. And that makes them more dangerous than any species we've encountered. They're not just trying to win. They're trying to change the very nature of interstellar warfare. A new transmission cut through their deliberations, a broadcast from the human fleet commander. Her face appeared on every screen, her expression not one of hatred or anger, but of calm determination. To the Dominion War Council, we know you're meeting to discuss the war's progress. Let me save you some time. You have two choices: immediate unconditional surrender, or we continue showing you exactly why attacking human civilians was the worst mistake in your species' history. The chamber fell silent as she continued. We don't want to destroy you. We don't even want to occupy your worlds. What we want is to ensure that no species ever again makes the mistake of thinking humanity is an easy target. Valthex stepped forward. And if we surrender, then we help you rebuild, she replied simply. Because that's something else you should understand about humans. We're just as capable of forgiveness as we are of vengeance. But that forgiveness must be earned. After the transmission ended, Nixarn faced his leaders one final time. We started this war thinking we understood humanity's weaknesses. We were wrong. Their greatest strength isn't their technology, their numbers, or even their determination. It's their ability to turn defeat into transformation. The vote for surrender was unanimous. As the council dispersed, Valthex remained, studying the battle footage. Add this to the historical archives, he commanded. Label it, the day we learned why humans named their ships after ancient warriors and lost battles. They don't fear defeat.